Hello and welcome to Steven University. This week we watched an episode titled Ocean Gem, in which the poor inhabitants of Beach City discover that their ocean has gone away, meaning no customers, or if you're Lars, no beach babes. So, predictably, the team go to... I say predictably, like, that's the premise of the show, Dan. The Crystal Gems go to save the day, as literally it says in the title song. Again, I don't know how I got away with using the word predictably there. They go to investigate...
I don't think you did. I think you've dug yourself in such a hole, you've not got away with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the opposite of me getting away with it, isn't it? I think where I was getting at is predictably, it's for them, they know where the cause... That's what's predictable about it. They understand that it's probably Lapis Lazuli who escaped. Whatever's going on with her last episode. So they go to try and find out where the ocean's gone, and it seems like she's using the ocean to try and get home. To which Steven then heals her gem, and she gains cool bomb-ass water wings. And the episode sort of ends there, with me cursing Steven for the thing he cursed himself last week, which is why do I never ask follow-up questions?
Yeah.
So let's get to it. Chris, Ocean Gem, what'd you think?
I really liked it. There's a lot to like. As I liked the little things, like the fact that they changed the title card, so it didn't have an ocean in. I thought that was pretty cool.
I'm glad you noticed that, because the first time I watched this, I didn't notice that. It was only a second viewing, because obviously you don't know that the ocean is gone at the end of the previous episode. So,
no, but I was like, where are his clothes and like all the blue?
Well, I'm really glad you noticed that, because again, it's not something I spotted the first time round at all. So that's very observant of you.
Yeah. So I liked that. Obviously, there's lots of tantalising questions, such as, is there clearly, seemingly, then there's a homeworld, and why are these guys drawn to Earth and all of that. Visually, it was great. I love the fact that they put themselves in a position where Steve, I can't see how that situation would have been resolved without Steven, because they just would have kept fighting. And it seemed like it almost a bit of a stalemate. And then there were times where she seemed to have the edge. And I hate because I'm happy to get into it, but fundamentally, this is a show that let's not mince our words here. It's a show I'm being forced to watch that I wouldn't usually watch. So as into it and happy getting into it as I am, when he produces the shield. And I led in bed at 12:30 last night go, oh! That's you winning as far as I'm concerned. So that's not fun. But that was my genuine reaction. Yeah. And I was like, oh, fuck it hell. What have I become?
You become me, Chris.
Getting fucking gems tattooed on my arm. Sorry, there's no need.
Can I just say that I do not have any gems tattooed on my arm, but I do own a lump of amethyst, the actual stone.
That's amazing.
Which I bought in New York.
But cool,
from the Natural History Museum, the one that Ben Stiller apparently is a guard at.
Trying to justify it. I was over there anyway. I just picked one up. I apologise for my swearing. Then that was unnecessary. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I thought it for such a strong setup, and for last week I compared it to the Green Ranger arc in Power Rangers. That was 5 episodes. I think that to achieve all the things they did, as always, but especially in this, to achieve all the things they did, which was an epic, interesting visual battle, some threat, a scene with pretty much all the characters we've met before, heartfelt moments, the shield, him fixing her, that little tease at the end of what happens next. To get, obviously she didn't say it in the voice of Saw from the Saw franchise. What happens next? I want to play a game.
Which is how you did it. Which is an interesting choice from somebody who has acted on stage in front of humans and in front of cameras.
Not well. That's not
better than that.
You wouldn't be like someone who works in Burger King then cooks you a shit burger on a barbecue. You wouldn't be like, well, you make burgers for a living. There's a quality issue here. Wow. Oh no, that guy out the window's not got a gun. He's got some wood. Separate thing. I thought it was a gun. Yeah. So the fact that it did all of that in 11 minutes 06 seconds or whatever it is a really, really stunning achievement.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're going to ask me for theories, and I know I tried really hard this week because I never have theories, and I feel like you die a little whenever I don't have a theory. And it because to me, not having a theory is just like being happy to just watch it and get the information as it comes. But I imagine in your head when I say I don't have a theory, like I'm watching it with like this stern face, like I'm not getting involved. Like
no, to be honest with you, no, I just think I genuinely think that you're not expecting it, because it's funny because I read a comment this morning about our other podcast, Fringe Observers, and people were sort of saying it's scary how accurate Chris's predictions can sometimes be. As I'm sure you, having seen, we're about to record an episode of that shortly after this, and you know what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that, and I was going, well, yeah, Chris has always got theories about where Fringe is going, and he always expects it, and he's not always, but he's very often on point. You know, more often than not, I would say. And then I was thinking about that in the context of this show, and I was thinking to myself, I think that you're used to watching, like, Fringe is a very specific type of show, isn't it? It's a science fiction show with like a certain level of like plot of the week versus character stuff versus mythology stuff, and it plays out in a way that is very familiar to you. So you're seeing the patterns emerge based on other shows you've watched. And I'm thinking about it, and I'm going, maybe the problem with Steven Universe isn't so much that it's animated, it's just that you don't watch a lot of shows with this structure, with this tone, with this approach to storytelling. Yeah. And as a result, it's become I think it's catching you off guard when the mythology is that deep, because it's an 11-minute show, so you're not really looking for it the same way you would be in a show like Fringe.
But it's also pretty unpredictable in the sense that, like, I don't know what the rules are with gems, for example. Like, like my theory based on this week is that they started on another planet, like in space, and then for some reason these guys were drawn to Earth, or the gems started taking the fight to Earth, maybe, so they like batted them off. I don't know. Like, I don't know whether, but she's gone to see more gems that are up there, and they're worried about them coming back, coming down. What's turning these gems bad, etc. And it would be, I think, on Fringe, like, for example, spoilers for season 1 and 2 of Fringe, there's a plot where you find out that someone has been taken in order to do something. And I think those, in a way, the way the story unfolds, that's quite, in some ways, a not playing down me guessing it, because, it was fabulous. But that's sarcasm. It's quite a logical guess. I don't fucking. There's no logical guesses when it comes to. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe other people have said they go, I made logical guesses, but for me, there's no. I can't think of a logical guess about why she's in space other than their home planet is out of space. So I can guess that bit, but in terms of theorizing why they had a fight, I can only assume the only logic I've got is, well, these guys really are protecting Earth. So maybe the other guys wanted to attack Earth, and that's what they fell out about. But that's it. The mythology and the rules of the gems, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to... Well, I might with more information, but I don't think I've got enough information at this point to work out a logical guess for that, because so much time in these early days is spent working out the rules. But the rules of someone being taken in Fringe... it's set, those rules, it's, whilst all this weird science stuff is happening, it's fundamentally set in our Earth, so there's no rules to learn. Whereas even though this is set in Earth, it's set in a world where there's superheroes, so there are rules to learn. It's set
in a world where there are these beings who are, and
that's the other
thing. Don't overinterpret the word I'm using, but there is something alien about the world they inhabit. This Earth is like our Earth, but not quite. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
it feels off slightly. So I think that, Go on.
So I'm really keen to make this point. Sorry, I'm aware I'm talking over you, but I think that's the other key thing. In Fringe, you have a character through Olivia. In fact, you have multiple characters. Olivia, Astrid, and Peter are all the three of the arguably main four characters.
Mm-hmm.
And all three of them don't know what's going on. Whereas in Steven Universe, everyone knows what's going on, apart from Steven, who as you complained about at the beginning of this episode, isn't asking any questions. So the only character we've got to probe and go, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. And let us find out more about the rules is more concerned about eating his tiger breakfast. Or his together breakfast. So I think that's the other reason. Did you call it Tiger
Breakfast?
Yeah, I merged 2 episodes there.
Yeah, you merged Tiger Millionaire and Together Breakfast. That's amazing. Now we've got to get the Steven Universe fans to invent and figure out what in the world a Tiger Breakfast consists of. I must know.
It's presumably it's breakfast where he eats it in his costume as the Tiger Millionaire. So
that's so deceptively simple. I really wanted a more complicated answer.
So I think that plays a factor as well. You haven't got a character that's going, what does this mean, like you do in Fringe, and therefore the information is not coming as
it's coming when the other characters volunteer it, not because he's asking questions. I mean, the best example of that is in this very episode when they're traveling to the water tower that Lapis has created to try and get outward, away from the Earth, as it were. When they're driving there, / traveling on Lion, Steven has a conversation with Pearl where she explains that the gems the things they've been fighting are corrupted gems. What exactly that means, how they got that way, where they're from, irrelevant in that moment. Like to her, she doesn't want to get that into that information. It's not irrelevant. Irrelevant's the wrong word. It's not touched upon because she doesn't volunteer that information. And it's a little bit, I think it sometimes comes a little bit down to what I call Harry Potter syndrome, which is when you've got a very young character that doesn't know what's going on, it's kind of easy just to be like, oh, they're too young to know. Therefore, you don't have to reveal all the information straight up, up front. I think if Steven was older, he would be like, where are my answers? This is ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? But he's a child, and they're probably protecting his innocence a little bit because he is innocent and naive. And do you want to put the weight of whatever in the world is going on him? Because I've seen people criticize this show and say, like, what, it's ridiculous that he either doesn't ask questions or they don't just tell him what's going on from day one. For me, it's like, no, that makes sense. He's, clearly whatever's going on is quite complicated. There's clearly a lot of history there. It's it's potentially very violent. It's potentially very dark. Do you want to burden a child with that information? Because could he handle that? And also, such a sort of happy, sort of naive, sort of not naive. I think naive is probably the wrong word, but such a happy, sort of pleasant child. Do you want to ruin him with that burden, whatever is going on? And also, whatever's going on, he's a part of it. It's not just a thing he's going to be passive to. He is some form of reincarnation of Rose Quartz. He has her gem and her powers. So whatever's going on, he's right in the middle of it. So you've got this question of of do you burden a child with that? And I mean, not to be pointing you too far in the right or wrong direction, Chris, but I don't know if you recall in one of those early episodes, there's a mural they find inside one of the gem buildings they visit, and that mural clearly shows a rose quartz shaped figure face to face with another tall, imposing gem-like figure that is not immediately recognizable to us. You might not remember that, and I might be leading you a little bit by pointing, at those sort of things. But clearly, whatever has gone on, Rose was at the thick of it as well. Therefore, Steven is. So, to that criticism of why does Steven never ask questions, even though we joke about it a lot on this podcast, or I certainly do, because it is kind of funny to think that he never goes, "Wait, what?" When you think about it, it makes perfect sense that they're not telling and he's not asking. I think everyone is invested in the mission of let's protect Steven's naivety. Let's give him some of his childhood before whatever the weight of this thing hits him.
The other thing about that and the Rose element is if he asks questions or they volunteer all the information at once, at some point that has to include the sentence, so about your dead mum, and why would you... Do you know what I mean? Either they've got to voluntarily put him through that, and all the grief and stuff that comes with that, or he's got to ask for it. And I get the feeling they've done a good job of when something positive is happening, or when he can see that he's in some way like his mum, then he does ask questions and follow it up. But when it's, dealing with the things that were involved in why she's not around, that's, what no one would, that's, I think, a perfectly human response to that. Or, you know what I mean, because they're not human, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I 100% on board with that. I think you're right. I think that's a big part of it too.
I think I kind of hate you a little bit for putting that Harry Potter slant on it, because now I'm just like, well, if I was, if I just watched 20 episodes in a row, I might have more answers. And that's only just over 3 hours, and that implies a step closer to getting a gem tattoo. So
or a step closer to going to New York, going to the Natural History Museum, going, where's Ben Stiller? And when they tell you he's not here, you then just go and buy some amethyst. Which is pretty much what happened. I said, where's Ben Stiller, where's Robin Williams, and where's the little version of Owen Wilson and Steve Coogan? And if you can't point me at those, then I'm going home.
There will always be better reasons to visit New York.
Yeah, there was. I was there for 2 weeks. I did lots of things. Anyway, other than harassing a poor museum attendant about where Ben Stiller was. But what's really funny, though, is I make that joke. I obviously didn't do that. It's a legit museum, blah, blah, blah. We looked around. It was very nice, very, very educational. We go up to the top floor. There's a little shop up there. And they are playing Night at the Museum and selling the DVD. That is ridiculous. What? That is, talk about capitalizing on thingy. They're literally, the film is on a screen playing.
They do that in. They don't play it on a screen, but in the Titanic Museum in Belfast. They
please don't say that.
The more glamorous holiday last year. They sell. They don't put it on the screen, but they sell every single film that's ever mentioned or been about Titanic. But they sell them. So I'm not kidding. The Leo Kate Titanic was 16 quid on DVD, and I'm like, wow, you need to be proper wowed and up for seeing Titanic to spend 16 quid on a DVD you could no doubt pick up on Amazon for a couple of quid.
That's amazing. So,
yeah. So there you go.
A couple of weeks ago, Chris, we watched Steven and the Stevens, and I said, there's a thing in this episode that we'll come back to when we get to Ocean Gem. In Steven and the Stevens, they're fighting, and they keep skipping through time. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
At one point, they land on the beach, and there is no ocean, and there are clearly marooned ships in the background. That they jumped forward into Ocean Gem, and then without really interacting with any of the things happening in Ocean Gem, and then obviously went back to where they were.
Oh, that's cool.
Isn't that really? That's really good continuity. I very much enjoyed that.
I always liked it when How I Met Your Mother did that. There's that montage which includes him going, I have to win her back, and then he says it later on.
Yeah, it's true. I'm looking through the sort of trivia on the webpage here to see if there's anything of interest. This is the first time we've seen Steven use his bubble on larger things, because he's bubbled the van this time, which is the biggest thing he's ever bubbled. Obviously the title card, not having the ocean, is one of the trivia, but you already spotted that. Again, quite impressed.
Kaboom.
Yeah, I liked, just as a little note of something I enjoyed, I really enjoyed that Amethyst does not understand what grounding is at all. She's going to bury Steven for some reason. Really liked that. Let's have a look. No. Oh, what did you think about the potentially sort of the dark side of Lapis when she nearly drowns Steven and Connie? That was quite dark, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was, and then to just immediately do what he wanted at the end. I appreciate he healed her, but I'd like to think he's in some sort of debt to her now that would stop, her doing anything that drastic. But it was pretty dark, because Steven's not going to die, but part of you's worried for Connie.
Yeah,
I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, because you know whatever weird magical gem destiny nonsense is going on. Connie doesn't seem, certainly at least at this stage, that essential to it. So she's the one. She's one of the few characters on this journey that you're sort of like, but I hope she gets out okay.
I love though, because they could have done them journeying in just the gems. They could have done it just the gems and his dad, just the gems and Lion. They could have done any combination that didn't necessarily include Lion and Connie and his dad. But I love that all three of those characters were part of that, and they were like Steven's gang for it.
Yeah, I thought that was really nice that like his friends gathered around him, his friends and family gathered around him. You know, I love that Lion came in. I really liked Lion fighting the water version of Steven. I thought that was cool. I felt the fights were really innovative. Like this is one of the things I love this episode for. Is the action sequence is really great. It's cool to see the gems fighting themselves. And there's also that great reference. Pearl says, "I hate fighting myself," obviously referencing the fact that she was fighting that hollow Pearl in Steven the Sword Fighter. I thought that was really neat. I loved Amethyst like being she couldn't beat herself, so she went Purple Puma from Tiger Millionaire. I thought that was really cool. Garnet like going to punch that version of herself whose head like reforms around her fist. Thought that was really badass. There was so much to enjoy here, and of course, even then, what's great about this episode as well is that seeing the town reacting to the lack of the ocean, particularly Mayor Dewey. I thought that was really fun. They got a lot of leg room and leeway out of just the jokes they could make there with that situation. Like that shot when they suddenly cut to him just with a hose, just desperately trying to recreate the ocean, and crying to himself. It's both really sad and really funny. And then, of course, there's the visuals. When Steven gets to the top of the spire, it is staggeringly beautifully animated. Just everything from the backgrounds to the... I mean, to be honest with you, that the tower itself, with the clouds swirling around it, is really beautifully animated as well. And in fact, I'm pretty sure Greg looks at it and says, "I've had an idea for an album cover," which is a great line. But even the visuals of them going down, driving through the desert where the ocean was the whole episode is animated beautifully. Sorry. Yeah, but obviously the moment that is most beautiful and most striking, because it is very different to the sort of visuals we normally get on the show, is without a doubt the top of the tower with Steven and Lapis Lazuli. And also, by the way, there's that really awkward moment which is just so weird. And let me see if I can find the exact phrasing here, because it's such a weird moment. So Steven goes up there. He has this really sort of tender moment with Lapis where they sort of come to an understanding, which is kind of nice. He heals her gem, and she can finally go. And he says, so he helps her, and she goes, "Thank you, Steven." He goes, "No prob, Bob." And then she's like, "It's Lapis." And he's like,
that was very funny.
There's just something so like weirdly human and totally hilarious and awkward about that. I felt like they were echoing. I know it was made in the past, but as far as I'm concerned, that was them honouring us in this podcast, Chris, with the awkward ending. But what do you think to Lapis as a character then? What do you think? Because she's such a conflicted character. We've seen this. We've seen her attack them. We've seen her be friends with Steven. We've seen her turn on the gems and be like, "It's them. They're the crystal gems you don't understand. They're acting as if they're the bad guys here. They're the threat." Talking about them protecting Earth, things like that, and you look at what she's saying and doing, and it's quite she's clearly quite conflicted, and she's conflicted because of Steven. She clearly is fond of Steven, but it's a very mixed message you get from Lapis. Where do you land on her? What do you think's going on with her? Do you have any thoughts about Lapis as a character before we? I
thought they did a good job of making her conflicted. I thought they did a good job of making you understand her point of view and her seem less villainous as a result of it. And but equally keep the threat that she was about to do some real shit and damage to them, and manage to make her, although you get it, you still kind of want her to be stopped. And that moment at the end where Pearl and Amethyst are like, Amethyst and Garnet, or Pearl and Garnet are like, what happens next? You feel, although you're oddly pleased, I think you're more pleased that Steven has resolved the situation than you are that she's healed and being able to fly away, because they made her threatening enough for you to be worried about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I think that you're right. It's really impressive when you think about it, because you don't really know Lapis's backstory. You don't know what necessarily her goals are. You don't know what the backstory is to why she's so aggressive against the crystal gems. But what's interesting about this is that somehow you do still understand her position, even though you don't know the exact backstory, and that's kind of incredible writing, isn't it? Because normally, to create empathy in a character, a TV show would resort to just showing you the backstory and being like, "Look, they're a good guy that thinks this." But in this case, they somehow communicate that without actually giving away the backstory, and that's amazing. And it's really clever, because it's lines like this. I've got a line up here, which is one of the notes, sort of one of the things I noted down as I was watching the episode, because I just thought this was really. I thought this was bizarrely interesting and enticing without really giving anything particular away. Lapis says, "Don't you know anything, Stephen? Your friends, they don't really care about other gems. All they care about is Earth. But I never believed in this place." And then she looks towards space. That's a beautiful line, and it tells you so much without telling you anything. And it really indicates a conflict of ideologies rather than an actual "I hate these people." It's like people on two sides of a debate rather than something else. But again, it doesn't actually tell you anything. So it's really
which is always more interesting. Which is always more interesting than a mustache twirling villain.
100%, a million times over. Yeah, I would much rather have an antagonist than a direct villain. The idea of something that's whose ideologies and goals conflict with our heroes, that is much more interesting to me. And also, I think that that one thing I will say about these sort of shows, and this isn't about Steven Universe necessarily as well, but these sort of shows love a good redemption arc. Love them. Even going even Japanese anime, a lot. I don't know what it is, but animated shows really seem, particularly ones aimed at younger audiences, seem to really love it. Dragon Ball Z was did a lot of that back in the day. 90% of their villains eventually became good guys. So you've got to you with a show when you've got a character like Lapis who could easily go either way now, and that's what's exciting, because you go, she's either going to come around to their way of thinking, or she's going to be an antagonist in the future. And the not
I think
knowing,
she's going to be an antagonist.
Well, I mean, the not knowing is what excited me at this stage. Yeah. So you think she's going to be an antagonist?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, because there's no other real threat right now, is there? Because it's at this point, this is where the show really does need to start stepping up, because when you think about it, clearly these corrupted gems on Earth have not been much of a threat to anything, because the crystal gems have handled it every time with relative ease.
Yeah. Whereas now we don't know who she's with, what she's going to do, what she's planning.
That is an exciting prospect. So yeah, I'm really glad. I think this is a turning point, Chris, for you. And this is going to be a weird pull, but at about episode 12, I said to you, there's a turning point, 10 episodes ish, without giving the exact number away, from now, and I was referring to this and its part 1. And I said, and if I think I said something like, when I can't remember how I phrased it, but it was like the show becomes way more what it's going to be at that point, and that's the moment you're going to be in, if at all. And I feel like we've again crossed yet another threshold of you becoming more into this show.
Yeah, I think so.
Because this episode opens up a whole world of possibilities and theories that no previous episode has done. I mean, it was as exciting as it is to see another gem at the end of the previous episode. The prospect of potentially they're from space, she's gone off to do God knows what, there's clearly something else going on here, and suddenly maybe you're thinking, does that gem battlefield mean maybe more than I thought? The one we saw in Stephen's Lion, I think we saw that.
I was going to say it was the lion, wasn't it? Yeah,
I think it was the first one we saw, the lion. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, like you say, it's the Harry Potter thing of just this big mythology and secrets being sort of teared open enough to make you want to rip it open further.
Well, cool. If only I knew that from the beginning of this, all I needed to do was compare it to Harry Potter, and you'd be in.
I probably no. It's a comparison that I think makes more sense now.
Yeah. You wouldn't have. If I'd have said Harry Potter and you'd have watched the first episode, you'd have been like, Dan, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
This podcast would have probably ended there and then.
Harry Potter.
We'd have never got past episode 1. Cool. I'm very glad that this played out the way it did. This is a longer one than usual, but I think with Warrant, I think it's earned. With there's a lot to unpack with Ocean Gem, and I'm glad we got time to just let you go at the beginning, because I listened back to the Ocean Gem, not Ocean Gem, Giant Woman episode recently, and we just get stuck on one point, Chris. We just talk about one thing for 50 minutes.
I feel a bit bad because we're at a point where that's not come out yet, but I know a lot of people are excited for it,
and I'm worried they're going to be disappointed.
I can't remember whether it's that good. So.
No, I'll be honest with you. We sort of cocked that one up a little bit, and it's partly my fault, and partly because basically you have one point that you're kind of stuck on, and my job in this situation is to respond to that, defend that, or give my opinion on that, and then move you on. That's kind of my job, is to get your opinion, is to pry the opinions out of you when you don't naturally jump to them. And I feel like I made a real mistake, because the point you made, I had a very strong counterpoint to. Not strong in that I think it's a good point. I mean, I strongly felt and believed in my counterpoint. And then we ended up debating that for 10-15 minutes, then it just sort of ends. So for those of you who many months ago were disappointed in our discussion of Giant Woman, hopefully something this episode, I think maybe hopefully is more what you were hoping for with that episode.
We'll do a tag on where it's like, if anyone was disappointed with this, in a few weeks we talk about Ocean Gem, and the podcast is twice the length it usually is.
But earned, absolutely earned. Who'd have thought that this show would ever have enough for us to unpack that an episode would be this long?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
we won't make a habit of it being this long, but
it's a testament to how much the episode achieves.
100%. That you could unpack it for 30 minutes when it's only 11 minutes long. 3 times its length. Yeah. That's something, to say the least. Yeah. So, yeah. So there you go. We'll leave it at that. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Stick with us, obviously. As we get deeper into this, clearly there's more legroom in this old bird than even I potentially thought. Which is saying something, because it was me that initially suggested we turn this into a podcast. So I should not be surprised. But there you go. All right, guys. Well, we'll come back next week and we'll have a chat about a much less involved episode, so it probably won't be 30 minutes long. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billigan.
And we'll see you next week as we discuss House Guest.